So, Battlefield 2042 Season 1, the moment that a lot of us have been waiting for. Delayed for 6, nearly 7 months, the first update with actual new content is just about to drop for the game, and I got the chance to play it the other day for a few hours. Thanks to EA for inviting me to the event. Season 1 is called 0 Hour, and here are the headline details. One new map called Exposure, set in the Canadian mountains featuring a huge amount of verticality actually, dedicated infantry fighting areas, and larger combined arms locations on top. 2 new weapons, a DMR called the BSV-M, which can be heavily modified to shoot full auto at different rates of fire with various attachments, and the Ghostmaker R10, a crossbow. A new specialist called Liz, whose role is to combat vehicles with her new TV missile launcher gadget, 2 new stealth helicopters, a new smoke grenade launcher gadget, and lastly, the Battle Pass. 0 Hour is a 3-month-long season beginning on June 9th. First impressions from my playtime then? Well, first up, the map, Exposure, is pretty good actually. It's unlike anything else available in Battlefield 2042, and to be honest, I don't think I've actually played a Battlefield map like this in any previous Battlefield game before. Set over 3 distinct levels, Exposure is staged on a mountainside in Canada, where a large landslide has exposed an underground military facility. So, at ground level, on top of the cliffs, you've got this like yellow, orange, plateau-like forest area that's scattered with buildings and compounds that have now been split apart by a recent landslide. Then, midway down the cliff, the landslide has exposed a tunnel and a network of buildings inside the mountain. And then you've got the rubble at the bottom of the ravine, and there's a couple of small bases that have been formed right down at the bottom. And I think I measured it. I went all the way down to the bottom and then pinged all the way to the top of the cliff. It's about a 200 to 250 meter drop from the top all the way down to the bottom. So, yeah, it's pretty tall. You fight across all 3 of these levels in Breakthrough and on Conquest, with infantry and vehicles combining together. There's going to be a big emphasis on the 2 new helis of this map because they're a great way to get from all the way down to all the way to the top of the cliff. But you can do it as infantry as well. There's lots of zip lines and cables that you can use. I can say that DICE's recent push to try and improve their base game maps with more cover and better pathing, all of that work is already present here on Exposure, and it feels like the extra time that this map has had in development because of the delay has been spent quite well, creating more detailed fighting locations for infantry on the top level and within the underground facility and the tunnel as well. That tunnel is split up by the landslide in the middle, so it's sort of opened up in the center, and it offers a really cool location to hold down as a defensive team, and it's quite interesting to try and attack as well, because you can come in from both ends, but it's kind of claustrophobic in there. The movement up and down the mountainside, that is sped up quite a lot for infantry, like I said, by the rappels and the zip lines, and there's even a giant vehicle lift over the far side of the map that you can actually fit a tank in. So rather than throwing a massive metal box off a cliff, DICE has thought about that, and you can use the lift to get down to the bottom of the mountain. It's really quite a beautiful map. It's very visually impressive, and it's unlike the base maps in almost every single way. It's not actually boring, and it doesn't take 10 minutes to run from objective to objective. I will say that there are still some large open areas at the top and the bottom of the cliff without much cover on them. So as infantry, you will still find locations where you're going to struggle to move from point to point because there's simply no cover for you to use. But this map is on a much better footing than any of the base game maps at the moment. It's not like the entire map is completely open with massive sightlines. But that doesn't mean that every problem with Battlefield 2042's inherent map design has been resolved, because there are still quite a few large open spaces here. Next, let's talk about the weapons. The BSV-M first, the new marksman rifle. This is the AS Val, for all intents and purposes, but it can be heavily modified via different ammunition and the barrel suppressor length to change how it performs. So if you want a slow, deliberate, semi-automatic DMR, you equip the high power rounds, and then you can tap fire however much you want to. But if you want a more mobile, lethal setup, you can use the suppress close combat rounds for a rate of fire bump, and you can use full auto to take down enemies at close range. So it's quite an adaptable weapon. But to me, it doesn't really scream, Season 1, come and check me out kind of weapon. It just feels a little bit underwhelming. It doesn't really stand out from the crowd. Plus, the fact that we already have the BF3 AS Val in Portal, that doesn't really seem like a very smart choice from the DICE team. This weapon is kind of already in the game, and now we have another version of it, so it doesn't really feel new to me. And then the crossbow. For any of you that play Battlefield 3 and remember the X-bow from that game, you'll feel quite at home here. It comes with standard, explosive, and a sort of rapid-fire pump action option that can be switched to on the fly in the plus menu. And well, it's just a crossbow. But instead of it being a gadget, like it was in Battlefield 3, where I think it works really well, this is a primary weapon, so you can't run it with an AR or anything like that. Doesn't really stand out to me as a weapon that I'd want in my first content drop. Both of these weapons feel like mid-season weapons, something that you could like surprise your player base with, rather than a proper primary weapon, like an assault rifle or a sniper rifle. Not sure too many people will want to run the crossbow, to be honest, because it comes with that lengthy reload for each bow. And I kind of get the idea that they went for the BSV-M because it's adaptable and it can sort of feel like multiple guns from the same gun, but honestly, I would have just preferred like 5 more weapons instead. The new specialist, Liz, well, she's alright, I guess. I used her as my specialist for the entire playtest, so I could try out the new TV missile launcher thing. UCAV fans from Battlefield 4, you're gonna love this. 2 rockets can be fired from this launcher, and as soon as you click fire, you switch into a rocket camera view, where you then guide the rocket yourself. And of course, the aim is to land a shot and deal damage or take out a vehicle with it. We worked out it does about 70 damage to the new helicopters when you land a shot, whereas you need about 4 shots to take out a tank. And because you only get 2 uses of it before it goes onto a lengthy cooldown, it's quite balanced against ground vehicles. Clearly supposed to be used against helis and jets. There is that lengthy reload in place between each of the rockets, and I mentioned the really long cooldown timer, so it isn't as spammy as it sounds, but a coordinated squad could definitely abuse this if they all ran it. As for the specialist herself, just like all the others, she may as well not be in the game as far as I'm concerned. We're still waiting for DICE to actually decide what they want to do with specialists, and that's overlapped with the first new specialist they've added into the game, so if they change direction in the future, well, God only knows what's going to happen, but most players of 2042, I'm going to say, don't really care for specialists and don't really want them in the game, and they've told DICE as such. And I only use the new specialist to try out the new gadget, so I think that says it all, really. The new smoke grenade launcher, that when you fire it, it pops out a big wall of smoke in front of you, like it goes like all the way to the left and right, and it creates a big sightline barrier, rather than just like a ball of smoke that you used to get from previous grenade launchers in past Battlefield games. I saw a few people use it, and it was quite effective in the tunnels in the mountain on exposure, so it is going to cover a lot of the area, so it might be interesting to see how people use that, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't use it myself. The 2 new helis, these are quite a nice change of pace. They do offer something different. Each has a pilot and a gunner position, so it's got 2 seats, and they've got 2 different modes. You've got the assault mode and the stealth mode. Assault is like your typical helicopter stance. You just fly around the map causing chaos and annoying every single infantry player rather than focusing on the tank that's right behind you. But the stealth mode, that makes the choppers undetectable to radar, and they can't be locked onto in this mode either. The turrets and the guns are disabled in stealth mode, and then the pilot gets bombs that can be dropped from the bottom of the heli to create massive explosions. And I guess the point is, because you're not on the radar, you can't be locked onto, you could do like a really cool flyby because no one knows you come in, drop a bomb and like get loads of infantry kills or something like that. Definitely a change of approach, change of pace, but I can't really tell you how they feel because I don't fly helis in Battlefield games, so you're just going to have to try that one out for yourself. And then finally, the Battle Pass. That's decent enough, I guess, although I'm already calling it that it's just going to get loads of hate because DICE is trying to make money from a game that has been a complete mess for the last 6 months. But we all knew this time was coming, so at least we should have a quick look at it. I am one of the foolish people who did put money down for the Ultimate Edition of this game. I know, I'm literally holding my hand up right now. I should have known better. But that means I do already have access to this Battle Pass, or when it goes live on June 9th, and the other 3 Seasons Battle Passes as well, so obviously it's relevant to me to look at what is available here. It is well stocked with cosmetic items for your weapons and vehicles, as well as outfits for specialists, and then other items like gun charms or images for your player card and additional Battlefield currency that you can spend in the store. And interestingly, the store didn't have any bundles in it during the playtest, so you'll have to wait until launch day to see if DICE wants to sell you some anime skin or not. And that's just about it. Nearly 8 months of waiting, and the first content update for Battlefield 2042 is just 1 map, 2 guns, 2 choppers, which are essentially the same, just skinned differently for the 2 different factions, and a couple of gadgets. That's it. and that's nowhere near enough content, not even remotely. DICE has had far longer than they initially planned to build content for Season 1, because I think this was originally scheduled to launch in January 6 months ago before it got delayed. So how is it that we've ended up with perhaps the least amount of content DICE has ever shipped in a major content update for one of their games? I wish I knew the answer to that question. During a presentation yesterday that we were given by the development team, it was mentioned quite a few times that the DICE team and other teams working on the game are fully committed to it. And I don't doubt the commitment, because there have been multiple updates over the last 6 months that have made the game a hell of a lot better than what it was at launch, but surely there's got to be a greater output here of real, tangible content. This is a studio that back in the Battlefield 4 days was delivering DLCs every 3 months that were absolutely stacked with content. 4 new maps, 5 new weapons, new vehicles, a new game mode, new gadgets, and even more. And now, for 2042, we only get 1 map, 2 weapons, 2 gadgets? What's happened here? How can a development team the size of DICE, a huge AAA studio, only produce 1 map in what has been a longer period of time than it took for them to produce and release 4 in a DLC just a few years back? I genuinely love to know the answer to that question. If I were in charge at DICE right now, I'd want to be absolutely stacking Season 1 with content to try and do my utmost to entice all of those players to come back to 2042 and give this game another chance. Whatever the previous content plan might have been, well, you may as well throw that out of the window, because it sure as hell ain't relevant anymore. And you should just be shoveling content into this update. Make a huge song and dance about how this is the biggest update you've ever had, the most maps, the most weapons, whatever you need to do to try and entice people to come back and play this game. Bring forward the map that you had for Season 2, or even go out of your way and create a smaller infantry focus map to satisfy the feedback that you've had from players that there's not enough infantry combat spaces in this game. Bring forward more weapons that were planned for future seasons, and just pack the update to the rafters with things that are going to keep players engaged. Season 1 was supposed to launch in January, as I've said, and it's lasting 3 months, so by my calculations, if we were following the original timeline, we'd be approaching the end of Season 2, start of Season 3 by now. So a lot of content that is being made for those seasons should already be in a pretty advanced state already. So take that content and front load Season 1 and give every person that purchased the game the reason to return. Give it a second chance. And potentially even get more players on board, because now you're putting out a massive update, so maybe people will give this game a shot. Surely you want to be doing all you can to grab all of those players, turn them round and make them look at what you've made, and be almost begging them to come back and give this game another shot. But no, DICE hasn't done that. They've almost acted as if the delay didn't happen, that we're not 6 months further down the line, and we're not 6 months further down the line without any content at all during that time. As we all know, content is king for video games, there's no question about it. It's the one way to keep players engaged, it's almost a foolproof way to keep players engaged, and unfortunately 2042, already severely light on content at its launch, isn't going to be getting much more in its first major marketed update since it came out nearly 8 months ago. The content that is actually there in Season 1, it makes it a pretty decent update. It's not the best update in Battlefield history, but it's pretty decent if it were being followed up 6 weeks later by a second map, more weapons, more gadgets and vehicles. But it isn't. Season 1's content is good, but there's nowhere near enough of it. And this is just it. Battlefield 2042 Season 1, 0 hour. Almost 0 content. Oh, and I completely forgot to mention, the Kaleidoscope rework that DICE has showed, that isn't arriving until late August, the very end of Season 1. And the rework of Renewal, that's coming in Season 2. So like 3-4 more months of waiting for fixes to maps that were obviously flawed to begin with and should have never launched in the state that they were in. That's not just disappointing, that's completely dumbfounding. How on earth is it taking them so long to get this stuff done? Right, that's me finished. Season 1 launches tomorrow, so if you own 2042, maybe give it a shot and see what you think. If you've been holding off on buying 2042, waiting for that new content, Well, now you've got your answer, so you can ask yourself again, is this enough to warrant purchasing this game? Only you can answer that question. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you soon.